Hi, all. Welcome to another episode of Data Never Lied podcast, a place where we talk about data, analytics, and marketing. Today, I'm honored and pleased to have with us Ken Williams, Master of Marketing Data Stack. Hi, Ken. How is it going?
It's going great. And yeah, I feel like that title is a lot to live up to. So I hope I can do that.
I bring it from LinkedIn, so it's your fault if it's not true.
Well, I
Okay.
tend to talk myself up on LinkedIn a little bit. So
Okay, so just you start a new work adventure, as I read on LinkedIn. And could you please tell us more about yourself and the Dive team?
yeah, so I got into analytics by way of a marketing team. So I actually did an MBA in marketing 15 or so years ago, and I was really drawn to data. So I worked on a business intelligence team. And before the word data science was a thing, that's kind of what I was doing early on in my career. I probably would have called myself like a multivariate analyst at the time. And then I transitioned into web/digital analytics around 2012, maybe 2011. And I was one of the early hires at this small company called Search Discovery that was about 14 people. And over the next 10 years, Search Discovery grew really quickly. I stayed for just over 10 years. And then I decided just last December to branch out and start my own consulting firm that's called Dive Team. And Dive Team's focuses on really modern data stack. Like, we specialize in analytics, but also data engineering and data science. And we really focus on marketing teams. So bringing that very specialized data expertise to solve marketing problems. And we're not an agency. All we do is consulting and data. So that's a little bit about us, and just getting started a month or so ago. So still brand new.
It's a great thing that you have your own firm, because I think you are one of the analytics-minded guy in our network, worldwide network, and everything you did since you started your new adventure is something that every people need to know or need to read related to simple thing like BigQuery or other stuff. So congratulations for your new firm and ad majora, as we said in Italy.
Thank you.
So, first question, and I gotta say, spicy question. How is the state of the art of analytics at the moment?
It's changing quickly. I have been thinking a lot about what is causing this change. But, if you just think back to the kinds of work we were doing back when I got started, 2012, 13, 14, it's a really different job. I think I've landed on there are three things that are causing that change, because they're environmental shifts. They kind of are impacting us, and they're out of our control, and they impact all of us. So one of those is that the barriers to using cloud computing are just dropping really quickly. It's super cheap. It's getting easier. The skills that it requires, even today, are less than they were 2 or 3 years ago. And so there's this really powerful tool that we all have that we haven't been using. And I think a lot of us are struggling with, what do we do with things like BigQuery? So that's one thing. I think also generative AI was a surprise to all of us, came in really quickly. Nobody expected machine learning models to be creative. And so that's been a curious thing. And we've been trying to wrap our minds around, like, what should we be doing with that? And also it's not that hard to use, so it's just like this new tool. So there's all these new capabilities. And then we've also got this growing consensus that we need to be better at managing customer privacy than we have in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So at the same time, we've kind of got some capabilities that we're taking away. Part of that is based on our own ethical choices, and part of it's based on just browser restrictions and things like that. So those three things combined, I think, are what's causing us to just have a lot of change. We have to think a lot about, like, what should we be doing? What are our competitors doing? Like, can Gen AI solve this problem I have? Am I being careful with customer privacy, customer data, and protecting the privacy of my customers? That sort of thing. So that's where I would say we are. We're at a state of really rapid change with a lot of confusion.
Yeah, it's something like confusion and mess. I don't know in US, but we have a lot of focus here in Europe related to privacy and user privacy, so data and stuff like that. And we are something that we are struggling because before the sign from US and the EU, it was a bloodbath related to how can I handle the data, how can relay on data that I'm going to send to Google or something like that. So we hopefully have some regulation and everything clear for all of us.
Yeah, that's another great point, though. Privacy is a couple of things. Like, we all have to figure out how to be authentic and honest with customers because we want them to trust us. But there's this other element of rules are changing kind of quickly, and sometimes there's not clear consensus on what should or shouldn't we be doing. So 2 years ago at Super Week, the whole theme was, is Google Analytics illegal? That's what everybody was talking about. I don't think we're worried about that anymore, except, last year in the United States, if you were a healthcare company and you had pages on your website where a customer could search for a condition, there was a new question, like, could capturing that data, even if someone's not authenticated, but just knowing what kind of health information they're looking at, is that personal health information, which violates our HIPAA laws in the United States. So, is confusing, lots of questions about that. And there's a lot of effort it takes to just understand, like, am I legally compliant, or am I doing anything that is considered, risky, or even in a gray area? Sometimes it's hard to know.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's a gray area for everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So usually we talk about data collection, but only few people or few firms talk about data strategy. Could you define a journey to get a correct path to be a data-driven company?
Yeah. So I'll start with an anecdote, which is that I remember in an old job, I had wasn't directly my boss, but a leader in the company who considered himself to be very data driven. And what that meant was that he wanted to capture everything, and I don't think that's what it means anymore to be data driven. In fact, I would think that, oftentimes I come in to work with clients who have this let's grab everything we can attitude, because later on we'll turn that into something valuable. And what they end up having is, a lot of technical debt. There's a whole lot of custom code capturing information. Nobody understands it because it's such a high volume. It's not usually very well defined and cataloged and all that. And so I think that to be data driven now means that you've got these 4 things that I've been writing about, these principles of modern marketers. So I think of being data driven as having these 4 principles. So, like, very focused on the value that you're creating, not just collecting data to collect it, but like collecting it for a purpose. Taking small iterative steps. So again, if you want to have a personalization program where you've got a website that's dynamically showing you content based on your preferences, start small, see what works, make iterative steps and evolve it over time, rather than having a massive project that will deploy in a year, like we used to in the old days, and will fail or succeed. The third thing, though, is having a very strong perspective on privacy. So understanding where you've drawn lines, and then being honest about those with your customers, and very conscious about making sure that you're living up to those obligations. The fourth comes from data mesh, which is just this idea of treating data as a product. So in an organization, there are people who are making decisions from data. Those are consumers, and the people who are preparing data, dashboards, collecting data, doing analysis, those are producers. And so they should think of themselves as a product company would think of having customers. Those customers need their products to be understandable. They need to be easy to use. They need to be valuable. All the things that you would do if you were a company building a product. So ultimately, if you're a strong data-driven company, you're focused on value, you're making small steps, you understand privacy, and you're making your data as useful as possible to those people who need it. That's my answer. That's my very long answer to your question.
It's not so long because we have a 30-minute answer in the last call that I have with another guy related to that agreement. You summarize everything, and each of us need to focus on the 4 pillars that you mentioned, because it's something that we need to go straight to the point. Otherwise, I think we can how can I say, we can fall in a messy hole related to data. As you mentioned, I want to collect everything, but what I can do with everything.
I have a good example of this. Yesterday, my business partner asked me if we should be putting UTM parameters in our LinkedIn posts. Mm-hmm. My response to that was, without UTM parameters, I can see that someone came through from LinkedIn, the referral to the site from LinkedIn. Yep. So what the value that adds is which post was it that they clicked on. And I don't think that's very valuable right now. We've got other things to focus our time on. So we made the decision. I think in the old days, we would have said, is there some extra bit of data we can get? And if the answer is yes, then let's do it. I don't think that's the way to go anymore. I think it's like, what's going to be valuable to us? What do we need? Focus on those things and nothing else. So.
It's something that focus in the right moment, I think. So you mentioned, for example, I don't want to set at the moment the UTM parameters because I have to focus on other stuff for my new company or something like that. So it's something you said, focus, yes, but I think in the right time and the right way, obviously, in order to have the actionable thing that we need to rely on.
Yeah, exactly. And what levers are we really going to pull if we start to see that? I mean, theoretically, if we had a lot of LinkedIn posts and we could see, people really like it when we talk about, BigQuery or something like that, we need to talk more about that. Maybe, but we're not there yet. We've got like 4 LinkedIn posts. So, and we're not generating content quick enough to get there anytime soon. So, yeah.
Anyway. Okay, cool. So just to take the rocket and go through the moon, now everything is artificial intelligence. Or better, artificial intelligence equals ChatGPT. The equation that we have at the moment. But you mentioned in the first question that I asked you, but I want to know your thought about artificial intelligence and its role in digital marketing or even in digital analytics. Is something that we need to be scared because they stole our job, or is something that paranoid related to this type of thing?
That's a great point. I do think that there will be jobs that are changed and potentially some that are displaced by artificial intelligence, for sure. I don't know that as an analyst that is the main concern that we have. So I guess the short answer is generative AI is useful for generating something, usually text, images, videos, things like that. It's surprisingly creative. But I do think that there's an element of we have a new hammer and everything looks like a nail right now, because it's not great at everything, right? It's not very good at being precise. It's not, from my experience, very good at analyzing data. I worked very, very hard. I would say through 2023 to get a good proof of concept of a generative AI product that could analyze data, make it easier to analyze data. Didn't have a lot of success. And I think there's like a couple of reasons. Like, as analysts, there's a level of understanding your data and knowing how to make it meaningful that LLMs struggle with today. And I don't even think that LLMs are going to be the right tool in the future for solving that problem, because again, their focus is more on creating than it is on analyzing. There are two exceptions to that. One is classification, which LLMs are pretty good at classifying things. Like, if I have a lot of text, I can say, read through that and tell me if this is about this topic or that topic, or more about one or the other. So it can do that kind of thing. Again, that's not usually useful for tabular data, which is our world. I think the other thing that's very similar is writing code. There are a lot of people working on large language models that will eventually write SQL. So I can ask a question and it will output SQL. And then theoretically, you could throw that into BigQuery and get your answer. Those models are very nascent at the moment. My testing with them has been extremely disappointing. And maybe we'll get there. Maybe there's something there. But I don't see anyone coming for an analyst's job anytime soon. For those of us who make our living off understanding marketing problems and how data is used to solve them, I think we're pretty far off, honestly, before generative AI replaces that. For those of us who make our living off of writing blog posts or generating images, you're gonna probably need to struggle to figure out how you can use this as a tool to make you more productive. That's probably true. That's not my world, though, if I'm being honest.
Okay. Cool. So I'm not paranoid related to jobs, something like that. Okay. So coming back, but remaining on the stratosphere, usually when we talk about analytics, marketing, we use acronyms like CMP, CDP, cookieless world, other stuff. And there is a lot of mess around these terms. What do you think about it? Is something that we need, especially on the cookieless world, is something that it could be a buzzword, or is something real?
Yeah, well, so I would say I think it's real. What I think, there was a lot of buzz about cookieless world a little while back, and I think some people in the industry responded with like, we're not actually that impacted by this because, from a data collection perspective, we don't usually live in the world of third-party cookies that are being affected. I think, there's some truth in that, but I do think that we are impacted. And the way that I think about it is okay, so I'm going to do another list. There are three things I have in my mind right now.
Okay.
Number one is that it is difficult to measure the impact that you're having with that you're making with some marketing activities that you're doing. That's always been true. That was true when we were doing all kinds of shady things with cookies and IP addresses 10 years ago. But I think that that's more apparent today. People understand it. And so you've never been able to answer the question, how much revenue did I generate through, maybe I spend $1 million on a marketing campaign? How much incremental revenue did I generate? You've never been able to answer that by looking at a report in Google Analytics or Google Ads. We just used to do that because it's easy and it's a good proxy. But the reality is we should have been running tests, right? Like, to know, had I not done anything, some of these transactions would have come through. I decided to make some campaign, and now I see revenue, but I only care about how much incremental revenue I created over what I already would have done. So incrementality measurement is easier to get marketers to buy in on now than it was in the past. So that's, in my mind, incrementality measurement is three things. So it's media mix modeling, which really only makes sense if you're spending at least $7 to $10 million usually, and you've got that across channels. Or it's geo testing, just like different experiences in different geos. Or the third is pre-post testing, which is basically saying, like, we have a forecast, but then we change something, and how did our actual performance compare to our forecast? So when I think of those three tactics, those are things that were a little bit difficult to get clients to want to do in the past, but I think that's easier now. So that's number one. Cookie loss, like, that's one big change. The second thing is, I think that we have to do a better job of explaining in our organizations what you can do with attribution modeling. Meaning, like, there's an ID that's written to a cookie, and it's keeping track of an individual user's history and trying to attribute some, like, later conversions to those. I think those are useful. Again, I can tell you names of people who would say we should not use that approach anymore, that it's dead. I don't think that's true. I think what that's useful for is, if I've got lots of tactics running, I can see relative to one another, which is performing better really quickly. I can, in a real-time report, say I've got, 3 LinkedIn posts, and this is the one that's getting the most clicks. Like, I can do that with attribution. But I can't answer that question of, like, how valuable was this and what revenue did it create, because that requires an incrementality test. So I think we're at a unique point in time where we have the ability to explain that and build cultures around that. And if we're going to be data-driven organizations, we have to understand incrementality versus attribution. And then the third thing, which, again, I'm sorry I'm talking so long, but can't figure out how to shorten this because there's definitely three. The third thing is we need to take better control of our own data for audiences. So, and this is directly related to third-party cookies. So you can't rely on Facebook or Google to say, go out and target, every 35 to 40-year-old woman who's in the market for a new car. Third-party cookies previously allowed us to do that, and now they kind of do in Chrome, but later this year Chrome will deprecate them, and we're going to lose that as well. So Google is trying to come up with alternatives with the privacy sandbox, but the reality is, I think that businesses need to get much smarter with creating audiences of their own customers. Mm-hmm. And using those for two things. One is remarketing, and the other is lookalikes, which the main way that you can get new customers to your site who look like your existing customers is with bid to value. So that is all about, to do those things, you have to really be good at collecting and blending and analyzing your first party data, which is what I would summarize as mastering the marketing data stack, which is like my little thing I say all the time. So that again is my extremely long-winded answer to your very concise question.
I think it's pure gold that what you said about these topics, because you touch three big things that sometimes is not so clear for everything, because sometimes we focus on marketing mix model, but we don't have the budget for that, or we focus on clear room and we don't know where to bring the data and use it. And
Yeah.
there is in this last year, I think, the rise of the first party data, but it's something that is not really new, because we have first party data since, usually, hopefully, we start a company, because we have the data. If we sell something, we have this type of data. And it's something that is pretty new, but at the same time is something old, because
Yeah.
I think it's something that we could relate on it before before COVID, before pandemic. So we have a lot of data to dig on and create lookalike, something like that. So you touched the three main points. That is something really, really interesting, and is something that we need to focus on from now on, because we have less data and we need to focus on computing data. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just about adapting to change. It goes kind of back to those new things that we've got, those environmental changes. What's easier for us to use the cloud. It's not allowed for us to use third-party cookies. So, the smart response to that is to take better control of the things that you can, use the tools where it makes sense. And I think that we can still do quite a bit. It's just a skill change, and it's a little bit of a strategy change for most teams too.
Yeah. And coming back to Earth right now, what do you think about GA4 and the BigQuery introduction for all?
So I love it. Honestly, I use BigQuery every day. I like it a lot. I think that I first saw BigQuery at either the 2014 or 2015 Google Analytics Summit that Google used to have in San Francisco every year. And at the time, I had customers buying GA Premium, so they could have been using this for free, but we couldn't think of anything to do with it. And I met with somebody who wasn't a consultant. She was at a big insurance company, and she was like, let me show you what we're doing in BigQuery. And she's pulled it up and showed me some queries that they had been working on. And it was really amazing to me, because it gave you this freedom to do, I guess, kind of two things. One is like, you are only limited by the power of SQL in terms of what you want to do with that data. It's not like you're creating a custom report where you've got metrics and dimensions. You can do anything. You can create profiles for users, and then you can take those profiles and create cool things. Like, of all my customers who visited in the last 30 days, let me put them into percentiles. And so show me the top 10% of those based on their engagement, like the number of pages they viewed. You can do cool stuff like that. So if you are a creative person who likes to dig around and think through creative ways to analyze data, it's amazing. And it's been a bit gate kept by this 150,000, at least in the US and Europe, it was $150,000 starting price to get into GA360 until now, when it's been made available for free to some extent with some small costs. And it's kind of complicated. You could end up paying if you have a lot of data. But everybody can try it, and I'm a big believer in it. I think it's super powerful, and I love it. I think it fits really nicely into the modern data stack, which we haven't really talked about yet, but I also believe is the future for most big enterprises. So I'm a fan.
I know you are a fan, and it was a tricky question for you. I was at the summit when they presented the BigQuery, and I remember I said, okay, what I can do with that?
Yeah.
It was something weird. And after a few years, we can understand that we can use it as a data lake to cross data from analytics, Salesforce, other stuff. And it's something, as you said, is something that is changing the analytics world and the analytics role, I think, because it's not a people that can see something in the, how can I say, in the GA4 platform and extract the data as you did in Universal, but
Yeah.
you need to dig to know the SQL. You need to know everything related to the join, inner join, blah blah blah, and so on. And
Yeah.
is complete new role. And I think company need to at the moment need to focus on people that are great at this stuff.
Mm.
So data analyst, something like that. It's no more, I said, one man show. I can do analytics, I can do SEO, I can do paid, no more at the moment.
Yeah. I think that's really true. I also think that it's more important now than ever to have good people like your investment should be in people more so than in like good quality products. There are still expensive products out there that do a lot of things, but I think it's now the game has changed a little. It's more about finding people who are creative thinkers and who understand how to create value from data, which is really different, I think, in a more of a higher level way of thinking than was required from an analyst in the past who might just do tag management all day,
Yeah,
and didn't really need to think so much about how's this data being used. And maybe they did some, but not to the level of how am I going to like do complex analysis on this data to create an audience? That's new.
yeah, completely agree. And related to that, could you give suggestion to people who want to start the data analyst career right now?
I would say, I feel like I was very lucky. I'd say take the path that I did, which started with marketing. Like I was a person who was interested in marketing strategy with no technical background, like 14 years ago. And so I had a really good understanding of, the 4 Ps of marketing, like price, product, place, and promotion, and, how like marketers solve problems to build businesses.
Yeah.
I think that we should have a big focus there now. I do think that once you wrapped your mind around that, the next thing to do is to wrap your mind around all of the tools at your fingertips. And so, this is where there's kind of 2 ways that most companies are going. You'll either build a modern data stack, which is lots of tools that are kind of composed to work with each other, or you'll buy a big marketing platform that does a little bit of everything. And I think that each of them is a better fit for like a certain type of company, But as a marketer who's getting started learning, I would really focus on like understand the pipeline of, where data comes from to where it adds value to the business. Focus on those higher level things. Stay on top of where people are being creative and trying new things. And don't stress out about all of the skills that you could possibly develop, because you're probably going to end up working with teams, and it's better to surround yourself with good people that you trust than to try and understand everything yourself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So guys, take notes and and start the path to be a good data analyst. So last question, where we can hear from you.
Oh, yeah. So I had, for a couple of years, my own blog at ken-williams.com. And I have now I am migrating over. So everything new for me is at dive.team. So we have a new blog there. I've still got kenwilliams.com up. But it probably won't be around forever, I'll migrate everything over. But I would say, I've got the blog there, and of course, LinkedIn is where I blast everything out mainly. So if there's anything new, if you follow me or Dive Team on LinkedIn, we'll be sharing things there. And I will prime this a little bit with what we're working on, because I do think it's useful to understand the kind of content we'll be creating. So we're going to be working really hard on trying to make it as easy as possible for companies to use BigQuery. So that's one of the big focuses that we've got coming out. That means, in my mind, making it really easy to deploy data form models. So we haven't talked about data form, but basically you'll hear a lot more from me about that over the next year. There's also a lot we're working on around incrementality measurement. So back to that conversation of media mix modeling and geo-testing and pre-post testing. And then we've also got this sort of separate arm that is working on these platforms. So say, for example, you're not going to compose your own BigQuery to, Dagster to DBT marketing data stack. That's one thing. We'll have a lot on that. But there are a lot of people who are never going to do that. It makes more sense for them to buy a stack like Adobe, or what's the name of the Amplitude, something like that. So we're going to be working on creating content there as well and help customers think through pros and cons. And, as a consulting firm who helps a wide range of companies with lots of different tools, we're trying to just sort of be as helpful as possible and build a brand around, our company is very experienced senior people who work with lots of tools. And so we're trying to just be be known as a good guide, for wherever you're at. So that's the content that we'll be pushing out over the next forever, but at least in the next year.
We just stay tuned with your website and your company website. I will put each link into the description. So guys, smash the button and go to the, do you have a newsletter or something like that into the website?
I do have a newsletter. At the moment, the only way you can sign up for it is to submit that contact form and check the box. I'm going to make it easier. If you don't want to contact us, you just want the newsletter there, you can just submit the form with the note, don't contact me, or something.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, don't contact him or them and subscribe to the newsletter. I will do it. Ken, thank you so much for your time. Everything you said is literally gold and is very, very useful for people that is just starting the process and people who is already into the analytics world. So thank you so much for your time, and it's a pleasure to have you on Data Never Lied podcast.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Guys, stay tuned for another episode of Data Never Lies. Bye.